What's the pettiest reason you've rejected someone? What's the pettiest reason you've rejected someone? Went on a first date with someone that was out of my league. Couldn't believe my luck. On our way to dinner, everything was going fine and the conversation was flowing. She seemed really into me. Suddenly she screamed at me to stop the car. Not pull over, stop right here right now immediately in the suicide lane of a 4-lane major road. Just before I came to a complete stop in the middle of this busy road, she opened the passenger door and tried to jump out. If a cop saw all this, it probably looked like she was escaping a kidnapping. She jumped out of the car and played Frogger across 2 lanes of traffic, and I sat there stunned with my passenger door hanging open into traffic. A few seconds later, she came running back with something under her arm. I couldn't see what it was in the mirror. She had a huge smile on her face, and as she climbed back into the car she squealed with delight as she showed me what it was. A fucking hubcap. She said it was to commemorate our first date, and that we could share custody of it. I could have it first. That was our first and last date. My wife said she was having second thoughts after our first 2 dates because of a weird smell. Like not necessarily a deal breaker but close. Turns out it was the jacket I was wearing. Nice Mountain Hardwear techie fleece thing. Loved that jacket, but apparently it smelled just a tiny bit like soup. It went mysteriously missing on our 3rd date, never to be seen again. To this day my wife denies any involvement in the disappearance, but I have my suspicions. We could have just tried, washing it. This dude was super sweet and had a lot of good qualities. He was a plumber and casually admitted to me that sometimes he will bite/clean his nails after work and taste the remnants of what he touched that day. I could not get over that and had to move on. Edit: a few people have mentioned it's not petty, but I feel like it is, and I should probably expand on that. Things were really going great, like he said all the right things and he was a genuinely good person with similar interests. Up until the point he said that, I was considering moving forward with the relationship. Also, I see nail biting as a habit that could be changed, and even practicing better hygiene, which he mostly did, except for those damn nails. Once he said it, and he was serious, my views and feelings for him changed. It's just one thing that completely turned me off from him. And thanks for the funny comments, I'm at work and needed a good laugh. We spent our first date browsing various record shops in Manhattan and Greenwich Village. I took him to my favorite ones. I told him what Elton John album I thought was best. He disagreed and was adamant I was dead wrong. He was going to a party at his brother's after and didn't believe in subways, as his dad had died in 9/11. The party was 100 blocks away in Brooklyn. Decided to walk him to the party despite having mild asthma and severe post-nasal drip. Once there at the door he decided it wouldn't work out because he couldn't put our differences aside. His last words were, "Do you really believe Honky Chateau is his best work?" Of course I do. He had this horrified, disgusted face on and said, "Yeah, no. That's just wrong. Not gonna work out since you have poor taste." Literally got rejected over Honky Chateau, but it's okay. My Phil thinks that album is the hottest shit. My perpetually single friend has turned rejecting people into a bit of a sport. I'll Tinder for her, which is all sorts of amusing, but one day, I had actually met someone for lunch and thought, here's someone that's kind of her type, I wonder if she'd be interested. I ended up pulling up his website and showing her some pictures of the guy. We get to about the 6th photo of 2 of his cats, in a treehouse. She explains his cats look bratty. Yeah, well, that's why you're single. Still. 6 years later. My brother had a roommate who would bathe and get ready for work in like 3 minutes. My brother couldn't believe anyone could bathe that fast, so he hid his soap one day just to see. For 2 weeks straight, the dude would go into the bathroom to take a bath and be out in 5 minutes, no questions asked about the soap. That was still fine until he told my brother that not only did he take a bath in those 5 minutes, but also took a dump. No soap anywhere. Years ago when Tinder was semi-new, I went on a date with a dude that forgot to disclose that he had epilepsy. I didn't have a problem with that. The problem started when he started having a seizure, so I got help and called an ambulance. He bitched at me for calling an ambulance. Left me several voicemails the following day screeching at me for being a horrible person, leaving him with an ambulance bill. Edit. I live in America where the medical system is a joke. When the ambulance arrived and helped my date through the seizure, he was okay and aware of what happened after that. They had asked him, "Do you have any medication we should know about, etc.?" and he said, "Yes, I have a prescription, but I don't like to take it. I haven't taken it in a few weeks." I was completely blindsided, yet understanding, of how someone would refuse to take their medication, but geez. I went on a date with a guy from Tinder, and I have epilepsy. Much like your BF, it had been a long time since I had a full-blown seizure, but I was having smaller ones often, so I was back on meds and basically just waiting for it to hit. This dude was fucking insistent that we go to the quarry to go swimming since it was so hot. I explained numerous times it wasn't going to happen, honestly left pretty convinced he was gonna kill me. At one point I was like, "Are you a lifeguard? Do you know CPR?" He didn't. I end the date ASAP. Dude was creeping me out. He walks me to my car, and this motherfucker turns to me like he's just had the best idea. He then proceeds to say to me with 100% sincerity, "Oh, why don't you get lifeguard/CPR certification, then if you have a seizure you'll know how to save yourself." I laughed and got in my car. There was no second date. I had an ex who I asked to put a pizza in the oven, and he did. I took a bite out of it when it was done and realized he'd left the plastic film on and it melted into the pizza. I thought it was just weird cheese at first. He then blamed me for making him cook poor people food that he didn't know how to cook, 'cause his mum apparently didn't buy that stuff. His mum did buy that stuff 'cause I'd talked to her about food recommendations before. The reason he didn't know is 'cause his mum cooks every meal for him and he never sees it before it's finished. Downcast face with sweat, he assumed she makes everything from scratch. I have a friend who is the king of breaking up with women for petty reasons like this. I think he may have rejected a girl for her teeth size. He left a perfectly beautiful and sweet woman once because her skin was too pale. Another time it was a potential mate's feet that bothered him. I ran into him at a brewery and he was on a date with a beautiful girl that was dark-skinned and dark-haired, so the pale issue wouldn't be a thing, and as I'm standing at their table chatting I notice her hand wraps almost completely around her pint glass. Very large hands for a woman. Wouldn't be a big deal for me, but I knew she was doomed in regards to a relationship with this guy. Went on a day hike with him. Halfway through the hike we came upon a spotted skunk. I started backing off and when he asked why I told him it was a skunk. He argued with me, saying it was a weasel not a skunk because skunks have stripes and that I obviously don't know what you're talking about. When I kept insisting he said, "I'll prove it to you." As he started walking towards it. Famous last words, LOL. Anyway, he gets sprayed obviously. We have to cut our hike short, and I make him ride in the bed of my pickup on the way home. I called it off after that mainly because he didn't listen to me and I hate being told I don't know what I'm talking about when I know what the facts are. He told me that he knew Latin, and as a classicist, mainly Greek, but I know Latin too. This was one of the things that made me agree to go on a date with him. I thought that even if I didn't like him, we could have some interesting conversations, and I'm always excited to make new classics friends. At the dinner I laughed about something and said, "In vino veritas." What? You know. In vino veritas. Turns out he didn't know Latin at all. He had lied and thought he could get away with it. There was no third date, and although I didn't say it, it was clear he knew exactly why. Hooked up with a girl next door once. She had some similar tastes in music to me, and her favorite hobby was singing and playing guitar. But she couldn't sing to save her life, and had a serious pair of lungs on her. The walls were paper thin, and every time I'd arrive home she'd suddenly pick up her guitar and start singing some of my favorite songs painfully loud, I assume in an attempt to grab my attention that she was home too, and it was too agonizing hearing some of my favorite songs being ruined by her wailing deafeningly loud voice. I didn't want to be rude and couldn't exactly tell her to stop singing, so I had to just tell her I wasn't interested. She quietened down and stopped making my eardrums bleed using my favorite songs after that. Felt like an asshole, but I had to preserve my sanity. I was rejected because I didn't like the taste of his preferred beer. That was it. I wasn't asking him to stop drinking it, I just didn't personally want to drink it. We were about to order another round, he asked if I knew the one he had just had, and offered me a taste. I gladly accepted because I try to be open to tasting new things. I just said I found it a little too hoppy for my tastes and I was happy to stick with what I was drinking. I wasn't rude, I said it was nice, but a little hoppy for me. His face dropped, it was almost comical. He then said something along the lines that he had changed his mind and he had better get home. That was the end of that first date. As in, he literally decided he no longer wanted another round. The date was over. He had blocked me on Facebook before I walked the 100m to the bus stop. Pretty sure I dodged a bullet there. We were going up the escalator at Wimbledon Park tube station and he kept grabbing my bum. It was really awkward because I had a short dress on and there were people behind us. I felt like that's why he was doing it, like he was trying to get a reaction from people or trying to show off. Also, he used to talk to me like I was his pet. He didn't talk to me like a human being. Like he just thought I was the silly little thing that he liked having around to look at, but didn't take anything I said seriously. I liked it at first because I was pretty young and he bought me lots of nice dresses and jewelry yada yada, but I became bored of him after a while and left. He looked over his shoulder as he was leaving after our first date. But he did it in this insanely convoluted, I'm in a Lifetime original movie, and this is my scene kind of way. It was so fucking deliberate and odd, I started looking behind me to see if there was something shocking going on in the back of the Starbucks. Nope, just Keith having his glowing moment in the spotlight. It seemed like a really fake thing to do, and I got the immediate impression that he was either so insecure that he chose to emulate Hollywood tropes rather than cultivate his own personality, or he had a bad case of main character syndrome. And, as it turned out, he did. We only texted for a few days after, but it was non-stop selfish bullshit and small drama the whole time. Politely declined a second date, and then found a rose and a note on my car a few weeks later that said this could have been our love story, with a picture of Brad Pitt he'd cut from a magazine. Nobody else in the picture, just Brad Pitt. I went on a match date years ago with the super sweet pilot. I live in a Navy town. He was really into me, and we got along great. But he had the tiniest hands. Not like, medically tiny hands, but just smaller than I was used to in a partner. I'm short-statured, but I have bigger hands and feet, and I just kept staring at his hands gripping his beer glass the whole night, thinking about what holding hands with him would be like and monstrous my hands would look in comparison. And I just couldn't do it. Had to turn him down for a second date. ETA, I've seen a bunch of people comment about their own small hands. I'm sorry, it wasn't my intention to make people with small hands feel bad. I think my issue was rooted in my insecurities about my own hands. They're not super feminine and kind of chubby. I have like 10-year-old boy hands scaled up to have an 8 ring size. His hands were perfectly fine, and I'm sure someone without insecurities about being bigger than their mate in general and who wasn't a total weirdo like me wouldn't have even noticed. This is definitely going to get buried, but I once went on a date with a man who said that dogs were incapable of walking backwards at all. I told him that I had a dog and she was certainly capable of backing up, but he doubled down saying it simply was not possible for them to do so. I was genuinely in disbelief but asked him to come to my apartment about a mile away. I'm sure he thought we were going to be getting down to business, but no. I had invited him over for the sole reason of showing him dogs can back up. As we sat on the couch, my dog came up for pets, and upon seeing she couldn't walk between the couch and coffee table to leave, she backed up and left the room. I just looked at him, expecting him to admit he was wrong. He blurted out, "Well, they can in an emergency." I told just about everyone I knew, and my family and I still joke about it years later. Like the meme. He wanted me to jerk him off with a slice of grapefruit while blowing him. Grapefruit blowjob. Edit, don't get me wrong, I'm a proud sexual deviant. Sex for us was me staying fully clothed, tying him up, and doing whatever new horrific thing he was into to his body so he could quiver and go "oh my god" for an hour before I finally allowed him to nut. It was great. He once smuggled a dildo in his JanSport up to my apartment that was the size of my forearm. I liked him. It's just for some reason the grapefruit blowjob ask was so silly it broke my frame, and I couldn't get off on dominating him anymore. I didn't see him again after he asked for it over text. I do miss him sometimes. He was a good guy. I hope he's found someone willing to partake in citrus oral at his behest. It just wasn't gonna be me. He said a bad word. My friend was trying to get me to date the best friend of the guy she was dating. We were all 11, so dating just meant hanging out at the park together. So, just like being friends, except maybe if no one was looking they'd kiss. I really wasn't interested, but everyone in our little friend group really wanted us to be a couple for some reason. Maybe it was because we both had glasses, and he said he'd do anything, so I told him if he didn't swear for a whole week then we could date. I was the annoyingly good girl and he was one of the kids who just recently started swearing a lot to try and sound grown up and cool. I caught him saying crap so he lost his chance. He actually was really trying, he just didn't know that crap counted as a swear to me. If he finds this, I'd like to say sorry for being such an asshole about that challenge, but I don't think we would have made a great couple. If it makes you feel any better, I don't think you missed out on much by not dating 11-year-old me. There were many reasons, individually petty, but not when combined. One of the reasons I knew it wasn't working, we were dating. He told me he honestly believed he was a vampire and needed to have blood sausage at least once a week to keep himself healthy because of it. He had those vamp freak fangs, company name, not name calling. I asked if he was a vampire, why did he have to buy plastic fangs instead of having his own? He was 19 at the time. He also said he wanted to grow his hair, he was a rocker, and was proud of the growth he had. When we met up again, I saw it was short and asked him what changed his mind. Apparently his mum told him to cut it, he refused, even cried over not wanting it cut but, and I quote, "She's my mum, she's a hairdresser, she knows what's best for me." He turned up with those fancy dress level fake tattoo sleeves. He genuinely thought they looked real and wouldn't admit they were fake until 2 days later, thinking he got one over on me. Teenage me really liked him, but the stupid was just too strong. Oh, and he chewed with his mouth open. That was the most heinous of all and the final straw. She didn't know Florence was a city in Italy. She had little to no motivation to learn anything new, but she somewhat knew the lyrics to most Drake songs. She was studying for her registered nurse exam that she already failed twice. I was studying with her to the point where I was getting passing marks on practice tests. She would fail them. Note, I'm in finance. No interest in nursing. I was just trying to help her study, to the point that I could pass the practice tests. My parents had a rule that I couldn't date until I was 16. Thing is, until you're 16 dating isn't easy since you can't drive. But my parents would bring me to meet my friends at the movies or the mall. So I worked around that. Had a few girlfriends of whom I only saw at school or mall, movies, the local fair, school dances. It was obvious to my classmates. Anyway, last day of school sophomore year, I'm 15 turning 16 in a little over a month. A classmate of mine straight up admits she likes me and asks if we can go out. I straight up told her my parents' rule. I could see in her eyes that she knew I was full of shit. To be fair, I said after the summer that won't apply, but then had a steady GF by the time school started. She wasn't heartbroken and we actually joked about it a lot through the rest of HS. Still felt petty.